employee relations, conflict issues, talent acquisition, recruiting, interviewing. They do all of that. The good news about HR as a career field in business is that it does show higher diversity rates in hiring than some of the other career paths. The majority of HR managers and directors and officers are female. You see a couple of rock stars here. On the left, you have Annette Martinez. She is the CHRO, that's the Chief Human Resource Officer for State Farm Insurance. She oversees 59,000 employees, and State Farm has over 79 billion in annual sales. On the right, you have Cheryl Johnson. She's the CHRO for Caterpillar. Caterpillar is the heavy equipment company. They're global. She oversees 102,000 employees, and their annual sales are $53.8 billion. So this is a field where we see much more greater numbers in female executives in these positions. And that bears out in the research. Here's some data from a 2016 survey from discover.org, and you can see in the bottom where I have my yellow arrow here that Chief Human Resource Officer, 62% female, 37% male. So we have a female-dominated career path within business in the HR field. So that's good, majority gender. If we dig a little deeper and we look at the higher rates by ethnicities, we see a kind of a similar pattern that I've been talking about with some of the other positions in business, is that these higher level positions, they are white dominated, Caucasian about 85%. We see some higher hiring rates for African American and Hispanics and some of the other career paths I've been talking about before. This is 2010 data. It hasn't changed too much. So really what you have in the HR field is a lot of white women as HR managers and directors. So still some room for business to improve with their diversity composition from ethnicity when it comes to the HR positions. On the left here, you see I provided a list of the top 100 senior HR executives, Chief Human Resource Officers, CHROSs, for major companies. You can check that out there if you're of interest on that. All the links you see on the slides, you'll want to go back to the Week 5 resource page and click on the Google Slides, the slides only version of my lecture. There's no narration, no voice, and all the links will work in that version. A lot is changing in the HR field. Like many other industries, it's being infused by technology. And one thing that I find interesting is HR is starting to use artificial intelligence to actually screen candidates before they bring them in for an interview. So you'll see the link here on this slide. This is one of your discussion questions this week. So your assignments this week in week 5 are just 2 discussions. There's no quiz or other pieces like corporate companion. You're just doing these 2 discussions. The first discussion are these questions here. I'm putting them in these slides, but you'll see them actually in your assignment in Canvas. But basically, the video is going to show you an applicant being interviewed by a computer. And it's measuring these micro expressions on his face and his voice inflections to determine if he's being truthful, and some personality characteristics. And the vendors of this software product claim that it has all this accuracy. So watch this video and then answer those discussion questions to see how you feel about being interviewed by a robot. Your other discussion assignment this week is related to what I would call a common HR scenario, which is an employee conflict scenario. HR managers deal with employee lawsuits, wrongful termination, sexual harassment, racial discrimination lawsuits, all of these. So they have to be very familiar with hiring laws and practices. But in this case, we see a situation where two employees at work had an office romance. It's now gone bad, and the manager is having to deal with the blowback of that situation and how they would handle that. So this is a common scenario where HR would be brought in to kind of clean up the mess. So that's your second discussion piece. So we've got some fun, juicy topics this week for your discussions. Let's look at the work-based learning employment data for human resources as a career field. Here's the good news. And again, this data is specific to North County, San Diego, and it's ran by our Career Center, so it's recent. Look at the job growth for HR managers, plus 13%. So this is a growing field. The pay here listed at just close to $70,000. This is for a manager position. If you're a director, you're more likely to be making six figures plus. And so these positions tend to have pretty good job stability because unless the company goes under, they always have a need to recruit new employees and train new employees. Some of the skills of an HR manager, you can see some of the specialized skills on the left, baseline skills on the right. Obviously, communication skills, both verbal and written, are of major importance for an HR manager. You're dealing with a host of delicate scenarios on a daily basis with employees, and you're also representing the company with job postings, and everything needs to be perfect and well written. So talent acquisition and some of the human resources software that they use and onboarding, there's a lot of skills related to HR. And you have to know the laws related to hiring practices. Who's hiring here in San Diego? So these are some recent numbers, and I looked at this and I identified a couple of different sectors. One would be like large science, tech, and defense contractors like General Atomics and Thermo Fisher are listed here. Arena Pharmaceuticals. So science and tech, those companies, which there's a lot in North County, they're hiring and they need human resources to manage their employee talent acquisition process. We also see hotel and tourism. They have a lot of employees. Now, here's an industry that's been impacted with the pandemic, but those numbers will come back. Marriott, Omni, Hilton are all listed here. So hotel and tourism has a large contingent of HR managers because they have big staffs at these hotels. And we also see universities. So we have a lot of UCs and colleges in California, and they're also hiring. Here's a typical HR manager. So this is a real HR manager that we pulled some data for and made this kind of anonymous information. So she oversees 100 employees. Her name's Kim. She works in Washington. She's been at it for 12 years. She has a degree in organizational management. And you see here, what does she like and what does she dislike about HR as a position? She likes that it's dynamic. It's never boring. Every day is a different scenario. So if you thrive a little bit on chaos and uncertainty and not being able to maybe plan your day, then HR could be, and you like to kind of pivot and flex and you're nimble, and you like that dynamic interaction in your day-to-day work life, then HR would be good for you. What she doesn't like is dealing with things like employee lawsuits, sexual harassment, things going wrong in the workplace, and people not knowing what to do. So by the time an employee contacts HR, there's usually already a problem. So if you have those kind of issues at your work, I do encourage you to approach HR because the laws are on the employee's side and they should help protect you. I've also provided a link here to important personality traits to be an HR manager. So go to the Google Slides version of this lecture, the slides only in week 5 resource page, and you can grab that link here. And this does a deeper dive into kind of the character traits required to be an HR manager. Check it out. So what are we looking to do this week? The main objective is get a baseline understanding of some of the different motivational strategies. How do we motivate employees to work harder as a manager? And then know these specific terms for future quizzes. You don't have a quiz this week, but these will show up on future quizzes. And those are listed here. 1, job description versus job specifications. How are they different? And you really need to understand this, particularly as you interview for your own jobs, knowing how to pull out key information on the job description and have a really solid understanding of the job specifications so that you can write a kick-ass cover letter and tailor your resume to put your best foot forward. The links to those definitions in the OER textbook are here in green. Secondly, steps of the employee selection process, how they screen, how they go from initial resumes coming in to eventual hire, and where do you get screened out and how you can avoid that. And then third, performance reviews. How do I make more money? My annual performance review, and how this practice is actually changing, and companies are starting to walk away from annual performance reviews and use some different methods for evaluating employees. So the links to all these terms are listed here. Make sure you know those when we get to the quiz or the exam related to these topics. So this first piece from your learning objective, what motivates employees? And there was a organizational psychologist, Dr. Hertzberg, and at the end of this presentation, there's some additional appendix-only slides if you want to read a little bit more about his research. I put some slides in there for you. But his research was around what motivates employees. And he found out that there's really 2 sets of rewards that companies provide that provide either hygiene factors or motivating factors. Hygiene factors, listed on the left column in this slide, are things that a company offers that will keep an employee in place. Meaning I need to have a certain amount of pay, I need to have a certain amount of benefits for me to even stay in this job. Those are hygiene factors. They will keep a person in place, but they don't motivate people to work harder. It doesn't light people up. On the right are what Hertzberg identified as motivating factors. Things like getting recognition for your work. Things like knowing you have an opportunity to advance in the company. Things like profit sharing, and there's a bonus structure that if we work hard as a team and we hit our numbers, we can get a bonus. And other things like a flexible schedule, what is the work environment like, and do they develop employees by paying for college and things of that nature. These factors were identified by Hertzberg as actually motivating folks to work harder. So what's of interest here is that pay is not a motivating factor. Pay is a hygiene factor. So you might think, boy, I really want to get my employees to work harder. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give them all a 10% raise. You probably won't get them working any harder. So you have to have a mix of both, things to keep them in the job and things to motivate them to work harder. Let's go back to some of the quiz items. Job description. And this job description that you see here is for a job that we interviewed for at Miracosta just a few years ago. And I was on the hiring board for this, so I saved some of this information. But when you're interviewing for a job and you're reading a job description on a job board posting, you really want to intimately understand the job description. The job description is going to outline, here's what you're going to do here at this job. And a good job description will list how much time, as I'm highlighting here, how much time you will spend doing those things. So for this position in the Career Center, you can see that this person would spend a quarter of their time going to campuses to conduct interviews and 15% of their time working on applicants' files and doing initial applicant evaluations. So this is like high school outreach is a big part of this job. And they're also going to have relations with colleges and universities. So those three combined are 55% of the job activities. If you don't like schmoozing and talking to people live, you're probably not a good fit for this job. So the job description tells you what you want to do, and you have to assess your own skills and abilities and experience and think, is this something that I would even like to do? The job description is going to help you identify that. So job description is what you'll do. Job specifications, here's what you need to bring to us as the employer who's going to hire you. You need to have these skills and experience for us to even consider hiring you. So job specs, you want to make sure that you have these. And as you're looking for positions in your field, if you're consistently seeing job specs with skills required that you don't have, then that tells you what? That tells you I need to go out and get those skills. So this is you want to match up your skills and your experience that are posted on the job description so that you can portray yourself as the person who has everything that they're after. This position, you have to have a college degree in human resources or a similar field, at least 2 years of work experience in HR or a similar department, can work in a team environment, good oral and written communication skills, reasonably proficient in Excel, Word, and Windows. So this tells you what you need to have. So look at the job specifications and then feature those in your cover letter when you're pitching yourself to be interviewed. Let's talk about the employee selection process. Always somewhat shrouded in mystery, right? Because we interview, we don't get the job, we never really get a clear answer why. My oldest son just finished college and he's interviewing in the pandemic, in the political science arena, and it's difficult. And he's not getting selected so far. And there's that not understanding why piece. And this is where the employee selection process can be shrouded in mystery for applicants. Typically, the hiring person, before they even send out a job description and a job posting, is they're going to meet with HR and describe to them, here's what I'm after. I need 1 of these people, or I need 6 of these people. Back in my day when I worked at Petco as a regional marketing manager, I was hiring regional marketing managers for our 8 different regions across the US for Petco, where those regional marketing managers would cover a certain region, and they do a lot of local promotions and special events and basically handle the community in which our stores were in from a marketing perspective. And so we talked about, okay, they need to have X amount of marketing experience. They need to have done X amount of special events. They need to have a degree in marketing, and a couple of other job specifications. And we're going to pay them somewhere around X. So if they make considerably more when they submit their resume, don't even bother putting them in my consideration pile, because we need to screen them out. So those job specs and those job duties are used as a filter to screen you out when you are submitting your information. So I always advise, don't put your salary information on your resume unless it's absolutely requested. And even then, I often wouldn't do it, because they'll screen you out. If you make too much money, you're not even going to be considered. Once they get you in and interview you, even if you make more money, if they love you, they might find a way to match your salary. So that initial screening piece, I also put here as a question on the right, not to be a conspiracy theorist, but we know that hiring rates from a diversity standpoint aren't very good, and there's some negative patterns there. So it's illegal to discriminate based on ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, religion, political affiliation. And I think most companies take that very seriously, but we just don't know, right? We just don't know what's happening. And we don't know who's the first person, which is usually somebody in HR, who's looking at those resumes and deciding who to keep and who gets tossed into the don't consider pile. That's stage 1, the initial screening application. So as you put together your resume, you want to know about the company that you're applying for, and deeper understanding of, the person that I'm going to be working for. What can you tell me about this person? Should I go talk to the receptionist and try to learn about this person? Anything you can tell me about their hobbies, interests, political affiliation, etc. And if you don't know if an extracurricular thing that you do is going to help your resume or hurt your resume because you might get screened out, then I'd probably not put it in there. So maybe you are super active on the Republican Party for students for your school, and you get screened out because the company that you're interviewing for, unbeknownst to you, is fairly liberal and democratic, and the person who's hiring you is democratic, and they see that resume and they go, ooh, and they pull out that resume and you don't even get called in. Now, you wouldn't really know, and it's really hard to challenge that from a legal perspective until companies start showing actual discriminatory practices like, hey, you have had 50% of your applicants were people of color, but your hiring rates of people of color are only 2%. What's going on, right? So it's companies don't want to be in that situation, but there's bias. It's just the reality of it. There's bias. So to protect yourself as an applicant, I would say know the company, know the hiring person, and be cautious about what you include on your resume and what you exclude on your resume. And if you're not sure, and it's something in the political, religious, ethnicity arena, I might not put it in there because your goal is to get in the door and get the interview. You don't want to get screened out beforehand. All right, so that's stage one. Then you have employment testing. They might have you do a writing sample, or when I was hired at Miracosta College, I had to do a teaching sample and get up and teach to a hiring panel of people. And then they're going to actually bring people in for live interviews. Nowadays, they might use technology between stages 2 and 3 and actually do another round of interviews and use a robot to do those interviews, or they'll do phone interviews to kind of further screen down the list to when they bring people in, because it takes a lot of time and energy to bring people in for live interviews. So they bring you in for a live interview, and then they might have you do a physical examination depending upon what kind of work you're doing. You're going to fill out an application. You're going to list references, background checks, and then they're going to look at those. I want to take a minute and talk about step 4 here. Your list of references is very important. So you don't want to kind of just tick the box and, oh, I've got some references from former employers. When a company calls your references to check on your prior employment places, they're usually pretty close to ready to hire you at that point. We like you. We just want to make sure they worked where they said they worked, that they were paid what they said they were paid. And we want to try to find out, like, is this person an axe murderer, or are they fun and nice to work with? You should notify your list of references when you're getting ready to interview at a new company. Hey, I'm interviewing for this regional marketing manager position at Petco. They want somebody with cross-promotional experience. And your reference is like, well, you didn't do any of that when you worked with me. I know, however, I did do some after I left your company, and here's what I did. I've done cross-promotional work with a couple of movie tie-ins with retail executions. I would love if you could talk about that, my friend, please. And by the way, can I take you out to lunch? My treat. So keep your references current, because they're also moving around and changing jobs, and let them know when you're interviewing, and let them know what you want them to promote in the case that somebody calls them. And then the last step is that decision to hire. Questions that come up here is, hey, how do I negotiate for more money? I'm going to point you to the Career Center in a subsequent slide with a lot of resources that will help you with these pieces. So keep that in your back pocket. Performance reviews are also part of the HR process. They typically write up these performance reviews and they manage making sure all employees and departments are doing performance reviews. However, the days of the annual performance review where they save everything up for a year and they sit down with you and you get a good review or a bad review and maybe you get a raise, maybe you don't. Companies are moving away from the annual performance review and trying to do more immediate mini reviews, if you will. So I'd encourage you to look at the trends in performance reviews link up here on the upper right. So they're going to review you against. Here's your job duty. How did you do against those actual jobs? On the upper right here is my link to the Miracosta College Career Center. So they have an awesome library of resources around getting a job. How to prep for an interview, how to do the interview, how to negotiate for more money after the interview, how to make a good first impression. So go to the Google Slides presentation on the Week 5 resource page, and you'll get these links. And when you click on these links, it'll take you into their video library, and you can move around, and they've got all kinds of good topics. I also want to address this piece. They're going to hire somebody. Why not you? And let me tell you this. Early in my career, I looked young for my age, and I was interviewing for these positions, and I always felt I'm too young. I don't have enough experience. Wow, the person who just left the interview before me looks like they're 40 years old. There's no way they're going to hire me. I don't know what I'm doing. Why am I here? If they bring you into an interview, they're ready to hire somebody, and you're on the short list. They're going to hire somebody. Why not you? You've got the skills and experience. Otherwise, they wouldn't have brought you in for the interview in the first place. So believe that you are worthy of being a candidate. And what I would encourage you to think about when you're in an interview is it's not a medical examination. So don't approach it like, am I good enough? Am I healthy enough to work here? Instead, go into the interview telling yourself, I already have this job. I just need to tell them what I'm going to do in this job. That requires you do a lot of research about the company and their competitors. You understand the job description, and you have an idea about what you're actually going to do when you get hired by that company. So if you can steer the interview question away from being on defense, why should you hire me? This feels like a medical examination, to offense, here's what I'm going to do on the first day of work when you guys hire me. You're probably going to get the job offer. It's really what employers want to hear from candidates is how are you going to contribute to this company? So go at it from that concept and just know they're going to hire somebody, so why not you? All right, I'm going to end it there. You've got an appendix after this with some extra slides. There's some extra slides with more information on Hertzberg's research about motivating and hygiene factors. There's also a few slides that cover unions and HR, human resources, departments that have to work with unions. So, for example, colleges and community colleges, I am a union employee, as are all the employees at Miracosta College, and the Human Resources Department has to follow union guidelines and things like collective bargaining agreements, very complicated and separate skill set. And you can check those slides for more information on that. All right, thank you for listening about HR. Good luck with your work this week. Reach out on Canvas inbox if you have any questions.
From up a still well, but when me take control, the girl is well.